and the room gets brighter right away. Sun-kissed skin, like a summer secret. Am I good? Am I good? Can you hear me now? I was going to start a little rapping, but, but let that play for a minute. Let that play for a minute. Yeah.
Well, my daddy left when I was young.
That's actually a friend of mine's song. So, since today we're doing a little different stuff, we're going to just let it play for a minute. So the audience can observe.
That was two sisters.
But in the meantime, welcome to E Factor Radio Show. I'm your host, Cornelius Bryant. So we're just going to let this play. I want everybody to mind and get into like a real slow, mellow groove right now. That's just let it play,
My mother was a good woman.
Mama was a good woman.
She did her best to raise us wise.
Yeah.
We found faith in Mama's eyes.
Based on a few things that we're going to talk about. Mama doing her best.
Then on Sunday mornings, we go to Sunday school.
See?
Went to church to learn about God. Learn about God. Learn about God. Oh,
what do you
get
think?
to heaven if you pray hard. So I became a preacher man. I'm gonna spread the gospel all over the land. Bits and pieces of my lifetime.
Bits and pieces.
Then I went to high school.
All right, from now on, we'll have our engineer Mike. We'll have to just bring it down. Just real
Now in
slow
high
and real
school, I
easy. Real
fell in
slow
love.
and real easy. It's interesting that that song came on because over the past few weeks, especially we're going to start at the 4th of July. And before that, but we're going to start at the 4th of July because that was the biggest event that we can say because on the grand scale that all these things happen. Like the song said that Mama did the best she can do. And as you remember, even if you weren't there in the vicinity, but you remember from the news, all the teenagers running wild at the beach, tearing up Newport Beach, all over, tearing up the place. And so someone had asked me a very important question. And the person who asked this question, they were not, we call it black, or some of you call it, they were not African American. And so they're trying to figure out, asking me about these things, about, what's going on in the black community with the youth. Now, let's get one thing established before we even start talking about that. This is with all youth. But we're just going to focus right now primarily on the black youth because of the way things are going. And too often, people make statements like, oh, it's because they're not being raised right. It's because their parents don't care. They're raised in a single family home with only a mother. Like the song said, Mama did the best she can be. But there's lots of different races. Every race has a single mother in it. In other words, every race, they have single mothers. It's not just the black race. It's not just the brown race. This is every race. But what our focus today is going to be right now, at this particular point in the show, is our young blacks, our young youth blacks, teens, young. And we're going to put young at 25 and under. Can we classify that as young today, 25 and under? Reason being, because you do see the activities they're doing. All these different things, the fighting, the out of control, the killing. And people are always saying when things happen, because, every time something happens, let's say, for example, with the Nolan Wells case, Ben Crump, he's there. Al Sharpton, he's there. All these people, these activists, they're there. But the question is, when you have a situation like in Chicago, where over that weekend, I think it was like 49 people got shot and maybe 20, 21 died. And the question always is that if you're concerned about your youth, your black population, why when these things happen, none of you black leaders or you black activists show up? And that's a good question. That is a very good question. But since they're not here, I can't ask them questions, or I can't defend them on those questions. So then it becomes a question of money. So are you saying that these people only appear or come to the aid of the blacks when there's money involved? Well, I, like you, I'm going to ponder that question. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to think about it. Well, on the surface, I came to the same conclusion. I'm asking the same question. Where are all these leaders, these activists, these people who are so concerned about our youth and our blacks losing their lives when those type of situations happen? Well, could it be money, fame, or what is it? Well, I myself know that sometimes, even we had the situation in Compton over at a place called the Wilmington Arms where the young man was killed, and he was an activist. I can't think of his name right now, so excuse me for that. And he's in the community, he's trying to help. He's trying to help move the community forward, trying to do good, and he was killed on the 4th of July. And so the question thus becomes, maybe we're afraid. Could that be a real reason that we don't show up? Could it be because we're afraid? I don't know, Mike, what do you think? You think when something like that happens, and because Mike's our engineer, because Joe's not here, sending out shouts and well wishes to Joe, could that be possibly why when things happen in our community, the black community, the brown community, that we, or the people who rush to the scene when there's something like the Nolan Wells case, or these cases where there's money involved at the end, possibly lawsuits and all that, that we don't rush to those situations like in Chicago or the different places where young blacks are killing young blacks because we're afraid of them? Are Mexicans killing Mexicans? Could it be that we don't rush to the aid because we're afraid? We're afraid to speak up, not because of the police necessarily, but are we afraid of the youth of today? What do you think? Right, exactly. Because the old saying, I don't know, I'll give you people some insight as to the saying in the hood, snitches get stitches. Okay, snitches get stitches. So therefore, we're afraid to speak out because we don't want to get stitches. Right? So we don't snitch. But we pay a price for not snitching. We pay a price for not getting stitches. What's the price? What is the price? I want someone, if you're there, if you want to call and say anything, the phone lines are working today, 909-383-1000. What's the price if we don't snitch and get stitches? What price do we pay? Good question. See, I compliment myself too. Good question. And the price is that, what about the 21 people who died, who were murdered? What about the 2 people in Compton on the July 4th of the Winter in the Arms who died, who were murdered? You see, we don't want to snitch because we don't want to get stitches. And it's funny because I see on TV all the time in these different communities, you know, when you have, see, today you guys can get mad at me, but I'm going to say what I want to say. Okay, so I'll pause so you can get mad. But when you have things that happen in the white community, depending on that community, or different scales of community, when things happen, not only do they snitch, but lots of times they go on the news. We're here in Beverly Hills where there was a home invasion robbery, and we're talking to Joe Williams. Joe, talk to us. What do you have to say? Oh, yes, I saw those guys going into my neighbor's yard, so I ran out and I called the police and I chased them down the street to get the license plate, and it's this is that. Okay, and all you're going to simply do is break in the house. But here we are, we're having all this mishap go on, murders, killings, robberies. But we say, oh, I don't want to say anything because snitches get stitches. Fast forward. Now the one that get killed or murdered is one of our kids or grandkids. And so what do? We go on the news, before the news people, and we cry, we weep, and we say things like, oh, the community needs to come together because you know who did this, you know who did it, and we need justice for my little Johnny. We need justice for my Susie. But months ago, when you had the opportunity to snitch and get a stitch, you didn't because you were afraid. But now that the shoe is on the other foot, we want somebody to come forward and help us to find the person who did it, to bring justice for our loved one. Well, newsflash, everyone. Everyone who dies has a loved one, majority of their time. Every kid who dies had someone mourning their death. So we decide lots of times on who lives and who dies. You goes, oh no, Mr. E-Factor man, with your bad attitude today. How do we decide on who lives and who dies? We didn't pull the gun. We didn't have the option of doing whatever it is that caused their death. Well, sometimes our silence is sort of like high blood pressure. If you know anything about high blood pressure, they call that the silent killer. The silent killer. Why? Because it kills many, but it's silent. It's not like a cancer. You know, you have cancer or something like that, and they tell you, okay, you're stage 4, stage 5 cancer. And so we know your life's going to end in 6 months, 2 months, 3 months, whatever the time is. So that's a loud killer. It's already announced its presence. I'm going to kill you in this amount of time. There's nothing you can do to stop me. There's no cure, there's anything. All we can do is make you comfortable. But with the high blood pressure, when our heart attacks and strokes come, it's right away. There was no announcement. There was no saying, oh, here I come to kill you. There was nothing giving you a time limit of 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever the time period. And so silence is not only a killer in that sense, but when we keep silent about things that happen in our neighborhoods, even in our own families, you know, we are allowing and we are aiding the silent killer. And so that's why I think part of the reason why we don't do that, first of all, certain people don't do it because there's no money involved. I mean, there's no money involved in you protesting this person getting killed or what have you, because they're just, what do they call them? Just victims of circumstances. You know, oh, that's just the way it is. Oh, that's just the way it is in the hood. Oh, that's just the way it is in this city. That's just the way it is. So what we've done, we've trained our minds to accept this. It's just like a lot of times we train our minds to accept poverty. You know, it's just nothing. Oh, look at them. It's no big deal. People in the street sleeping. Oh, it's no big deal. I'll just step over them. You know, so we've trained our minds in the same way to accept that violence is a way of life in these areas. But it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. And so, of course, when other people ask us certain questions, especially if it's a black or white question, a rich or poor question, sometimes we get mad. Not the person asking the question necessarily, but the person being asked the question. But what I've come to realize is sometimes they're not being racist when they ask these questions. They're not being a bigot. They're not being, what they say, oh, you just think you better than me. That's not the case. They're seriously asking out of serious concerns because they're wondering why. Why is it that something happens that has to do with a white person killing a black person, and now we're blowing it up? We're blowing it out of proportion. I'm not going to say out of proportion because of death. I'm saying that we have everybody giving their opinion. Everybody's show giving their opinion. Every other word is a cuss word because we're blaming the other person. And now it's a situation where it's, oh, we have to stand up and do something when this other race kills our children. We have to stand up and do something when we're mistreated by other races. But my question is, at what point do we stand up for ourselves? What we're going to do, we're going to take a break. And on the other side of this break, I want to know if anyone wants to call in and comment. If not, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave. No, I'm not. I'm going to stay here and finish. All right? So we're going to take a break, and on the other side of this break, we'll be back.
So many roads, so many roads, so many roads, so many roads.
What's going on, Rob?
Some good roads,
I said, what's going on?
we got some bad roads. We got some happy roads. We got sad roads. We got some long roads and some short roads. So many roads. So many roads. So many roads. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Looking back through my life, all the roads that I have traveled, I have lived, and I have died. I have laughed, and I
Are we
have
ready?
cried.
Okay.
But as time
All right. Welcome back to the E Factor Radio Show. I'm your host, Cornelius Bryant. And what we're talking about today is a sensitive situation about, racism and how people feel when people in their own neighborhood kill each other and all these things. And so I asked for a caller, but no one's called. Because, see, I don't want people to think, I love my race. I love everybody, but I love my race, and I want to see us prosper. I want to see us grow. But the thing, I know what we need to do, we need to help each other. But then again, there's also other issues. And so what I have here, I have a special guest in studio, but you can't see him. but he's a special guest in studios. And so we're going to let him talk and listen to him. And let's go. So come on, Rob, let's give us what you got.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. You brought up a point about how, race plays into play. This whole snitches get stitches plays into it. Something that I kind of understood even growing up is that, we were nurtured in a way. We were taught in a certain way that because of the neighborhood we live in, it's because of the people we surround ourselves. But oftentimes we kind of have to step back and look at the bigger picture. Why did this neighborhood became to be, right? Majority of the neighborhoods, especially minority groups, are like that because of the system that put it in place. And so there's a thing of systemic racism, barriers, etc. But it all goes down to the bigger picture of why this came to be. So like places like, for example, I grew up in a predominantly majority group in Linwood down towards, I would say, east of LA. For those that are listening, and if for those that know where Linwood is, predominantly majority is Hispanic, Latino, or if not, some black communities. But that was like probably like almost 20 plus years ago, last I lived there. Fast forward, I moved into Rancho. And that, at the time, was predominantly white. It's a safer, nicer community. But it's a huge different demographic, where you notice the communities in Linwood is not entirely rich. It's suburban. It's pretty beat down. There's a little bit of crime in the community. Versus in Rancho, it's predominantly safe, where majority of the community feels open and welcome. It's the idea of the American dream that I can send my kid out no problem because I know that the neighbors I can trust, versus the neighborhood in Linwood or Southgate, I can't trust them. And so it goes down into how do we beat those types of barriers? How do we beat this type of community of, not to say the community itself, but how can we grow and progress and move forward from it? And it all goes down to, civic engagements like city council meetings, school board meetings, especially talks like you and I are having right now. It's talking about our struggles and our upbringings to get to a point where we can find common ground. So like, for example, if we were talking about the communities, how can we improve? How can we make this better? And that's where we voice our opinions in city council, getting involved in local elections, which is why I myself and others around me have always been advocates for trying to make sure we get local leaders that talk and think like us to get the things that, we want to improve in our city, because we love our city. Don't get me wrong. It's not to say I'm bad mouthing Linwood or Southgate. That's where I grew up with. I grew up in that community, and I love the community that's there, and anywhere where I go. Each and every single city has its own respective culture, and I respect that. One thing that my family has taught me is respect your elders and respect the culture. And so that's something that resonates with me. And so I want to do my best in my part to improve the communities where I'm at. And that means having these conversations here, or getting myself involved in local city and local school board politics, because that's all it takes. It only takes maybe a couple minutes of our time, or maybe 30 minutes of our time. But
Yes, and that's true. And I think as these communities, black communities, Mexican, whatever your community is, you need to get involved. Every time things happen, if you have a situation where there is a shooting, a police shooting to someone in the community, or something like that happens, and we all gonna say naturally that it's racism. Part of it may be that, but the other part is this. If we, as the community, got involved, even with policing, I'm gonna give you a little thing right here. All right? And whenever you want to, Rob, you just chime in, okay? Here we are. You're in the white community. Your neighbors are police. So you feel safer because not only are you in this neighborhood, but your neighbor is a police. So now you feel twice as safe. Oh, my neighbor's a police officer. My neighbor's a police officer. So now you feel safer. Whereas in other communities, the police are I'm not going to say hated, are a bit disliked. So a police, he doesn't want to live in this neighborhood because he's afraid for his life, or he's afraid something will happen to him. But I think if we have our own, watching over our own, so to speak, like I say, let me make sure I take this stance that I'm not prejudiced in any way, but I'm just trying to help us. I'm trying to help us because we are in crisis, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, and it goes down to, again, this type of notion that, like the example you gave, like if you have a police officer in your community, it's like predominantly a really safe community, you'd feel more inclined to feel like you're safe versus another community where they'll say like, I don't trust them. And it goes down to building those bridges together, building that trust and that community forward. Because the fact that, and I don't blame them, I don't blame anyone, especially even parts of my community, the Latino community as well. I don't blame them when it comes to them having a dislike against law enforcement and stuff. I understand it and I wholeheartedly empathize with them. And that's something that a lot of us don't really take to heart, is empathy is a strength. It's not a weakness.
Correct.
So like what you're saying, there's two different sides of the coin, but it's one thing to know is that these are people. We're people. I have a job here back in the studio. I also have a side job as an instructor. People might have personal biases of me, but at the end of the day, I put forward that I want to better myself and my community. And so that should be the type of mentality we need to move forward with, is bettering ourselves, but also bettering the community. And if you have a police officer, or not just police officer, but anyone involving in law enforcement or anything, or even politics, local leaders, or even public servants, etc., we should treat them with respect in a way. And respect goes in tandem, goes back and forth in a way. But easier said than done, right?
Right. Of course, easier said than done. But these are things that we need to work on. We as a people, we need to work on. I'm not just talking about the blacks, the whites, or whatever. Like you say, the politicians. You get here and you run on a certain promise that you're going to do certain things. But then once you get into the position where you're elected, it's almost like you turn your back on the promises that you made.
Yeah, and it's an issue too, because when we elect our leaders to be in these positions of power, saying that they're going to do these such and such promises, and then they end up turning our backs, is a complete mistrust. And I get it. I've been in that road, and I'm barely 29 years old. I'm young for my age. I'm very young compared to the majority of the people I interact with. But it's about proving and showing an empathy. It's building that bridge. It may not be an easy bridge, but by slowly building those steps, we can get somewhere. And that's something that it takes a lot of practice, right? It's a lot of practice and a lot of communication. And at the end of the day, as long as all of us has a good support system in hand, then the sky's the limit, right?
Yes, there's three. I have the 3 P's. You keyed on one: practice, patience, and more than anything, perseverance. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It didn't de-happen overnight. It's not going to re-happen overnight. But what we have to do is we have to be patient enough to let it work. We have to practice hard enough to put forth this effort. And we have to persevere no matter what happens. We have to have our minds made up that we want this to turn around. We want change. Because if you look at everything that's going on with teenagers of all colors and all races, I'll be 65 soon. So I'm like on my way to either out the door, or I'm on my way to be old, whereas I'm gonna need someone to take care of me. And so at the rate it's going, is like, where's the future? Where's the future going? I mean, social media I'm not going to blame everything on social media, but I'm going to say it plays a big role. I mean, every time you go on social media, you see these different groups, these different kids. They're fighting each other. They're swinging each other. They're doing all this damage to each other. And you're thinking, why? They're out of control. They have a meetup group. They have times to meet up, and then they do bad things. And they don't realize, what you're doing is you're taking someone who spent decades working to build something, and in one night you tear it down. So there goes that person's livelihood, their family's livelihood, and there goes that generation wealth that was going to be passed down to somebody else. It's gone.
Yeah.
So now what? So comment.
Yeah, so like I was gonna chime in, and I like when I respect your time talking. Um, One thing, like for me, I'm gonna bring in my experience as an educator. I teach math at university, um, at private institutions, etc. And so one thing I practice, I preach what I preach what I say. I preach and I practice what I say. uh, the thing about empathy and the thing about understanding, it takes a while, but once you find the strategy, eventually you find up newer and different ways of engaging. So like for me in the classroom, the kids are really young, they're sponges, and for me, I'm a parent, so I understand that wholeheartedly, that anything that you say, anything that you do, the kids will mimic that. And so what I practice is always practicing preaching what I say. So like for example, if I'm preaching equity with everyone, especially me and you and everyone else, I treat everyone with fairness. I make sure I practice that and I display that in front of my son, because I know that someday he'll be an adult. He'll be in my shoes, not to say in my position, but he'll be in a position where he might be influencing change in his own community. And so it's remembering that we're all humans. We all make mistakes, but at the end, remember that, understand how other people might feel if you start, not to say discouraging, but let's say you start bad mouthing them. And one thing that I always keep in mind, I'm very clean when it comes to racial slurs and stuff. I never, at the end of the day, would never say any racial slurs, because that to me is a complete disrespect to the person and to myself. Because me saying a racial slur to you is a complete disrespect, and that's just me. I wholeheartedly believe that. And so teaching at middle schools, for example, I taught at in here in Riverside Unified, close to Riverside Unified. A lot of the kids, they grew up with really in a really precarious neighborhood where a lot of the language is just basically racial slurs. And not to say that's the only thing they know. It's just that's part of their dialogue. That's part of their lingo. And so one thing I always remind these kids, I'm like, hey, this may be cool and all to you guys as group, but in reality, it's hurtful. You like, how would you feel if someone were to call you a racial slur based on your ethnicity or the color of your skin? Growing up, as I mentioned, I grew up in Rancho. I was bullied because of the color of my skin, and majority of the school was predominantly white. And I share that mostly just because that happened 15 years ago, and this thing is still happening present day. So even if you don't think this thing goes away, trust me, it's still going. It's a matter of rewiring our brain and rewiring ourselves and saying enough is enough. And so I practice that in class. I practice that when I teach. I practice that outside of classroom and in front of my family, because I want to be a better person for not only myself, but for the people that matter the most.
Right. We're going to take a 3-minute break. And when we come back to the 3-minute break, I'm going to address something that you said that's really important. So people, stick around. We'll be back in 3 minutes. E Factor Radio Show. Cornelius Brown, your host. Special guest, Rob. Let me call and see what Ken wanted.
I just wanna tell you a little bit about myself and kinda how I am. I'm a man who stays busy, but that's okay. You can call me busy man. I love it that I have the time to do the things that I do. I thank the Lord for giving me the time to do them when I do. Believe me, I know my life ain't always gonna be this way. Just because the facts of life change from day to day. but that's the way I roll. That's the way I roll. Let me tell you when I roll, I really do love to roll. That's the way I roll. That's the way I roll. Let me tell you when I roll, I really do love to roll. For me, it's not that easy just to shut it down, even though it's now and then. Just when I think it's time to kick back, I look up and I'm on a roll again. I love it that I have the strength to do the things that I do. I thank the Lord for giving me the strength to do them when I do. Believe me, I know my life ain't always gonna
Welcome
be
back to the
this
E
way.
Factor Radio Show. I'm your host, Cornelius Bryant, and I have a special guest, surprise guest today, Rob. And what we're talking about our youth. We're talking about different things in the black community and different communities and the way different communities operate. And so before we went to commercial break, Rob was talking about his experience, and because he's a teacher in different things, and about racial slurs. And it's so funny because in certain places or certain areas of life, racial slurs are not what they used to be. They don't have the same meaning. You know, you could say one word in one area or one event you're at, and it means nothing. You turn around and you can say that same word slightly different, and it's hateful. You know, so I'm going to take the word in. I'm going to take it when it ends with R. And that word is hateful. That word represents racism and hate. Now I'm going to turn around. I'm going to take the word that starts with the N, but this word ends with A. So, I'm going to let you guys figure it out. And if you have to go to your Urban Dictionary and look up N words that start with R and N words that start with N and end with R, and N words that start with N and ends in A. And then I'm going to give you a little lesson. Is it a lesson? You're a teacher. Would I say a little lesson?
You can say it's a lesson in a way.
It's a lesson. Okay, I'm going to give you a little lesson on something. Because a lot of people, I just don't understand. I just don't understand, you know? And other people go, oh, you call me that again? Oh, they get so offended. But let's drop back to a certain age group and a certain demographic, okay? So this demographic, they use that word that starts with R. So that's hate. You know, that's a hateful word. But then you have the other demographic who uses the word that ends in A. All right? And that's a more friendly toward each other demographic. Even though this demographic don't like it, but that particular group of people and demographic, for them is fine. You can be black, you can be white, you can be Mexican, you can be Chinese, and everybody in that demographic or that group or that particular circle, or what would you call that?
Yeah, you can call it like an inner circle in a way.
Yeah. They use that word, and it's cool. They refer to each other like, hey, my, and then they be like, I'm a bad, And, you know, you're sitting here, you're looking at this, and you're thinking, well, why, when I say it, they get mad? Because certain people can say certain things, and a person gets mad. And then you turn around and you say it. I'm like, yeah. And so that feeds into a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it goes into that notion of, is it acceptable? Because you think that both of them, I weigh them equally, regardless. Like no matter which way you see it, I weigh them equally, because even if it's wholeheartedly like, oh, it's not to be offensive in any way, I understand that. But there are other people might say, well, they're not allowed to say it.
Right.
Because they're not us, right? And that's discrimination. You don't, whether you like it or not, that is discrimination. And for me, I will not say it. But to educate my son, if he ever comes up with these, if he ever stumbles upon them or he ever discovers them, I will do my best to educate him and remind him that these carry meaning. Even if you wholeheartedly say the lightest term, you can say it all you want, but to me, it carries the same weight.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what people don't realize is certain things, with certain things you say and do, you develop a certain mentality. Okay, and when you develop a certain mentality, no matter which way anything is used, there's always abuse attached to it also. So you can be a nice person, but sometimes by you being a nice person, there's a certain amount of abuse you're going to suffer from being a nice person. So there's always certain things attached to certain things, good or bad, words, whatever the case may be. And certain mentalities, once you develop this mentality that certain things are okay, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay. What it does, it robs you, to me, I mean, all these are my opinions, so don't get mad, people. You have yours, and I won't get mad at you. But all these things...
I think at the end of the day, as long as we can talk about it civilly without, going at each other's throats,
right.
I think that's a good step in the right direction.
Right. But see, after a while, these things, they rob you of little pieces of this, little pieces of that. And before it's over, all these things, they become almost acceptable. The killings, the shootings, all these things, the snitches get stitches, I don't want to say anything. These become almost like an acceptable behavior, and it's overlooked. And what it does is that, like we said at the start of the show, there's always going to be somebody who suffers. Always. It doesn't affect me because it happened over there. It doesn't affect me because it happened over there. Because one thing this Iran situation has taught us, something that happened thousands of miles away, it affects us. You see?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a lot of people that say, well, it's not happening here, why should I care? I feel like you should. Because even if it doesn't affect you in any way, that's money going over there. So your taxpayers' money is going to a region we have no business in being in. So regardless of, and again, I can take flack as much as I can, but I just go based on realizing that this makes no sense. Like, why would we go down there in the first place? And then again, our conversation earlier, people choose to live this way because that's the way it is. And for me, I don't sit by idly saying, I'm going to accept it. I'm not going to accept and be like, this is how it is. I'd rather change it and improve it.
Right. But see, the whole reason I brought that up was not because I don't this way or that way, but the thing is that it affects us here because our gas prices are going up. It's affecting jobs because when everything gets so high, you can't work. Everything gets so high, you can't afford it. And so you think because it happens 3 neighborhoods over or 4 neighborhoods over, it doesn't affect you. But everything that goes on in this world, we are just thousands and thousands of miles apart, but yet we are right here. We are right here. We're affected by everything that goes on. There's nothing that goes on around this world or anywhere that doesn't somehow or another affect us. So even though you have all this situation going on in these neighborhoods, it don't affect me, so I don't care. This neighborhood, it doesn't affect me, so I don't care. It affects you because as humans, let me restate that again, as humans, we should always be, like you say, empathetic. We should always be caring about our fellow man. So if you know that this person right here has, things are going so wacky now, this person, they've lost their whole family. This person has lost his whole family. And we're wondering why. But at the same time, when I see some of these things that goes on, I just sit there and in my heart I cry because I'm like, wow. Because I know how on the other end, how someone's feeling. Someone who's going through that. So we watch it on the news. Oh, man, that's bad. This person killed that person's whole family. we're sad for a minute, but we go about our business and think, okay, it's over. We don't think about it again. But that person or somebody somewhere is constantly living the rest of their life with this on them, this burden, this pressure, this grief that never goes away. And a lot of times people go, oh, well, I saw signs of it, but, it wasn't my business. I didn't want to get involved. And, then later it's like, oh, and you want to tell everybody your story. That's the sad part. When it happens, you tell, oh, yeah, well, I saw him walking up with the gun, but I didn't want to get involved because, stitches get snitches. And now this whole family's gone, whereas you could have just, boom, made a call. Hey, something's wrong with him. Because sometimes it's not always, like I've said this before, it's not always evil or hate in our heart. Sometimes mentally we have things that happens.
Yeah, and it's that notion of snitches get stitches too, because we all live by that, and we know that, for example, that kind of scenario, like if that thing were to happen, I'm pretty sure many of us would probably bat an eye and just walk away, and it's not our fault. Let's be clear, like it's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's not everyone else's fault. It's just that's how we were taught, but we can always change it. And
Right.
that's the thing that I want to read. And that's the thing that we kind of piggyback back and forth in.
Right, and that's the whole purpose of this. It's not a verbal thrashing, or it's not me lashing out because of hate or anger. It's just me wanting you and us wanting everyone to know, we've got to be more caring. I mean, we've got to help each other in this situation. Like I started off talking about our youth and, thing we don't realize. Like I say, I'll be 65 soon. And as we're getting older, and this is what the 20-year-olds are doing, the 19, the teens, so a decade from now, what are the ones in elementary school, the ones yet to be born, what are they going to learn from what's going on now? So what's their mentality going to be? What's their posture going to be when it comes to stuff? And so if there's no work going on, no training going on, it's not everybody's fault. And sometimes people always say, because I look at these different things, and like I've said, since these things have happened, I've watched so many of these commentators and these people, oh, where's their parents at? Oh, the mother this, the mother that. Oh, but like that song said when it started.
I get into that kind of thing too. Like, oh, where's the parents?
Right. But you can have this mother at home, or you can have this mother or this parent, or you can have two parents at home. But they're working. They're trying to keep a roof over everyone's head. They're trying to keep food on the table. They're working because, last week gas was $4.95 a gallon. Because of the next strike, now gas is up to $6.95 a gallon. So you're trying to figure out all these things, how you're going to take care of this family and all this. And unfortunately, sometimes things slip between the cracks, and people slip between the cracks. And so as a community, I used to hear this expression, it takes a village to raise a kid.
Yeah,
right?
And I agree with that notion.
Right. And I think we need to get back to that mentality. Not okay, while the parents are gone, you got this villager sneaking in, abusing the kids and doing all these things, or you got this villager robbing a house, or you got this villager doing that. Has a village together with a common goal, a common purpose, is how do we take the cycle that's spiraling downhill at a rapid pace and not only slow it down, but how do we reverse it? What do we do to get back to all these teens of all races and all colors and all ages? How do we get these people back on track for a positive relationship with the world?
And it all goes back to it takes a village, that notion. And within that village, everyone has not necessarily a role, but everyone has a purpose. And everyone can do multiple things simultaneously. Like, I'm not just a board operator, for example. I'm not just a teacher. I'm also a parent. I'm also an advocate. And if I take the time, heck, I could be a mechanic within a week. There's a one scene in Avengers, the very first one. Those they might not know the reference I'm getting to. There was a particular study in quantum mechanics or something like that Tony learned overnight, and they asked him, one of the actors ask the question like, how did you know this certain subject of quantum mechanics? Oh, I learned it overnight. Like, we're all capable of learning. We're all capable of doing this stuff. We just need to be proactive. And one of the things I always advocate is we don't just elect one person to be, oh, I'm going to be that one person that's going to fix everything in this city. No, 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 no. That defeats the whole purpose of why governance is in there and the reason why there's schools in place for a reason. It's what can you do? How can you bring this community together? How can you improve the lives of others by uplifting them? What can you do? And that's the conversations I like to bring in is what can you do? How can you bring into the table? What is something you can do?
Right, right. And that's what we want to do. So people around the world, let's focus on not being so quick to put all this stuff on and talk about these people, talk about them, talk about the mothers, the parents, talk about things that we're not familiar with, because you are being exploitive. Is that a word? Exploitive is a word? Is that a word?
Exploited, yeah.
Yes. So you are basically, you're taking these things these kids do, you're exploiting them, or people, you're exploiting them, and you're making money off of it. And so what you're doing is you're sort of like God, what you want to say? You're the social media, you're the airwave pimp. You're the airwave pimp. You want everybody to come to your page and see all your stuff and do all this, but you're taking these situations, and instead of you trying to figure out how to make it better, you're constantly doing it to make money, to make everyone else seems worse. Well, you know what? Thanks, Rob, for making the show today. Thank you, world, family, and friends. I've got to sign off, but I'll be back next week. And just because I said this about the teens, join me next week because I've got a show. I've got a kid named Truly Adams, 15-year-old race car driver, Formula 4. All right. Thank you. Goodbye. Thanks, Rob. Goodbye, world, family, and friends. See you next week.
Daddy left when I was young, but I still had a whole lot of fun. Bits and pieces of my life and time. There was 2 sisters and 2 brothers. I'm the last one born out of the 4. Out of the 4. Out of the 4. Oh, and after me, my mama, she had no more. My mother was a good woman. Oh, she did her best to raise us wise. And we found faith in mama's eyes. Bits and pieces of my life and time. Then on Sunday mornings, we go to Sunday school.